me right now is Michael Eric Dyson. He's the author of Tears We Cannot Stop, a sermon to white America. Michael, good to see you. So it has been one heck of a week, and in this last week, several monuments, have been torn down, have been covered, some even vandalized. What do you think of civilians taking matters particularly into their own hands, like we saw in Durham, North Carolina, where they took down a statue? Citizens taking it into their hands as opposed to mayors like in Birmingham or in Baltimore who have covered monuments.
Right, or earlier in New Orleans under Mitch Landrieu. Look, I think it's extremely important that citizens understand this is not a neutral and objective test case of the American memory. When people say, hey, leave these statues up because after all we have to deal with history, are you really dealing with history? The litmus test is in the following. Do those statues provide opportunities for people widely and broadly to discuss the racist reactions of this country and resistance to African American people and other allies in the fight over democracy? Not really. Those statues are usually evoked for that reason. They are the source of pride. They are the source of pride for those in the South who feel that the war is still being prosecuted, that the Civil War goes on. What the Civil War historians call that late unpleasantness is still with us. So the reality is that it's important for citizens to literally, like Bree Newsom climbing the pole to take down a flag, or these citizens in Durham, North Carolina, who said we must take matters into our own hand. We wish the government would do so, but civil disobedience is an extremely important part of the American project. Martin Luther King Jr. and others engaged in it, and I think the nation must be forced to come to grips with the fact that memory is critical. There is no such thing as neutrality, that these statues reinforce white supremacy, and the attempt of America to push into our collective consciousness a stream that is marginal and yet serious, that is, secessionists who wanted to leave this nation. It is amazing to me that Colin Kaepernick can be the subject of such consternation in the NFL and in America for refusing to stand for the anthem because he believes it dishonors his people, and yet people walking in walking with the Confederate flag and celebrating neo-Nazism have not been similarly assaulted as un-American. So what we're fighting here, I think, Fred, is the future of this nation when it comes to how we properly memorialize what we think is important. And let's not pretend that what dots the landscape in terms of these statues reflects the American character. And it's public space. That means all of us have to recognize its importance. Therefore, it should be fought over, and I think those statues and other emblems should be removed.
And so we've heard all of these sentiments, so many sentiments all week long, particularly because we have reached a particular high point this week. Among them, Lawrence Kusnar, an anthropology professor who studies monuments and sacred spaces, told the Washington Post, saying this: I detest the legacy of division, bigotry, and slavery these monuments represent, but I think they should remain. These pieces of metal and stone only have the meaning we assign to them, and that meaning can take any form that we like. So as a continuation of that kind of thought, you've heard a number of people, including the president, who say taking down these memorials means erasing history. And so what's your response to that and the use of the word erase in this context?
I'm not sure. In Germany, do they have statues of Hitler? Do they have statues representing their Nazi past? Do they celebrate it as a neutral, objective examination of history and the fracas and chaos that were the occasion for such battle? I don't think so. So let's not pretend. Look, I get it. I get the fact that these are monuments that should be examined. Put them in a museum. Put them somewhere where they should be examined. Like, this is a relic of our past that needs to be seen as something negative and something that undermined the capacity of all people to come together. If that's the case, why don't we litter the landscape with memorials dedicated to a whole range of things, that transgender people, or gay, lesbian, transgender, bisexual people, or African American people and the like. These monuments, therefore, are meant to summarize American ideals. And now that we are advanced to a point where we see that this is a shameful part of the past, they must not be allowed to remain in the present to radiate that hate. Because contrary to what the professor has indicated, what we see these statues doing is mobilizing people who want a flashpoint for their own present form of racism and bigotry and white supremacy. They don't deal with that. These things continue to be radioactive. So in that sense, they are live, living, breathing reminders of a heinous past that continues to exist in America. And until we confront them and pull those monuments down, put them in a museum somewhere, talk about them in classrooms as horrible representations of who we are, we will continue to give life and breath to those bigots in America.
And now 1 week away from what we saw unfold in Charlottesville, here we're looking at live pictures as you and I speak of Boston and the hundreds, what seem to be hundreds of people who have descended on that city. There are dueling rallies. Some are there in the name of free speech. Others are there in the name of peace and love. Do you believe this kind of gathering represents a type of awakening in America, or how would you assess what's happening right now?
Absolutely. You know, with all due respect to Tina Fey, who said that, hey, you shouldn't go out there and oppose them, just eat some cake. No, we can't just let them eat cake. We've got to oppose bigotry and hate where we find it. If Martin Luther King Jr. had taken the Fey route, he would have never given an I Have a Dream speech or contested racist bigots who attempted to undermine American democracy. So I think it's extremely important that in Boston, itself a city of such tremendous, torturous race relations in America, a place where an American citizen was, I think a black lawyer, was beat with an American flagpole. So the reality is Boston has its own vitriol and its own hate, and yet this becomes the site of a counter-protest that demands peace. Yes, respect for free speech is extremely important, but even more important is respect for life and the vital means by which we sustain that life. So I think what's going on in Boston is extremely important, and the rest of the nation must reflect the same kind of resistance to the hate and disavowal of American principles that we all claim to adhere to.
Michael, Eric Dyson, always good to see.